Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take stacks of research, articles, and books, and we boil them all down into the insights that really matter for you.
Great to be diving in.
Today, we're tackling something pretty profound, I think. A question that doesn't just belong in history books, but hits us right where we live, in our own choices. Have you ever faced one of those moments? You know the kind I mean. Where doing what you know is right feels, well, almost impossible.
Yeah.
Where it means standing completely alone, maybe going against powerful people, risking your job, your reputation, maybe even more. What did you do? Or maybe more to the point, what would you do?
That's a heavy question. It really cuts to the core of, well, what it means to live a life with integrity, doesn't it? We're
Exactly.
talking about moral courage.
Right.
That inner strength to stick to your principles, to act on what you believe, even when the pressure is immense, when you might face ridicule or isolation or just, devastating personal cost.
At that moment, your character's truly tested, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's the crucible.
And our mission today is to really explore this idea, this kind of courage, through the lens of Stoicism. Now, Stoicism often gets a bad rap, like it's just about gritting your teeth and suppressing feelings.
Right, the whole stiff upper lip stereotype.
Yeah, but it's so much deeper than that. It's actually a guide to living a genuinely good life, and moral conviction is right at its heart. So we're going to take a deep dive into the life of someone who maybe embodies this more vividly than almost anyone else in history, Cato the Younger.
Ah, Cato. Yeah, his commitment was legendary. Unwavering adherence to his principles, even when it meant defying Julius Caesar, the most powerful man of his age, and ultimately, well, paying the ultimate price for it.
His story is just incredible, and he's a fantastic figure for us to focus on because later Stoics, people like Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, they looked back at him as this absolute paragon of virtue.
Exactly. His life gives us a real-world case study of Stoic philosophy in action, under the most extreme pressure imaginable. So we'll examine the Stoic ideas that gave him that resolve, explore how these ancient thinkers actually trained themselves for this kind of strength, and then hopefully pull out some lessons for our own tough choices.
And we're drawing on a lot of great material today, foundational texts like Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, but also modern scholars who've really unpacked this stuff. William Irvine, Lawrence Becker, Pierre Hadot, Ryan Holiday, Donald Robertson. Quite a list.
A really rich tradition to draw from.
So to really get our heads around this kind of courage, we have to start with the man himself, Cato the Younger. His name alone became synonymous with principle in ancient Rome.
It really did.
When you hear Cato in that Roman context, it's more than just a name. It's like a benchmark, a standard. Even in his own time, people apparently said, we can't all be Catos.
Yeah, that phrase really speaks volumes. It suggests a level of virtue, of unwavering moral integrity that felt almost superhuman to ordinary Romans. He became this living symbol of what true Stoicism looked like in practice.
So what was it about him? How did he get this extraordinary, almost intimidating reputation? Was he just born that way?
Well, that's what's fascinating. He was born in 95 BC into a family that was, yes, part of Rome's aristocracy, even though their origins were technically plebeian. And his great-grandfather, Cato the Elder, was a legend in his own right.
Right, the famous censor, known for being very traditional, wasn't he?
Extremely. He championed the mos maiorum, the ancestral customs of Rome, things like duty, seriousness, courage. He was all about preserving Roman tradition. But here's the irony. Cato the Elder was deeply suspicious of philosophy, especially Greek philosophy. He saw it as this foreign influence that could corrupt Roman values.
Okay. So how did his great-grandson end up being the ultimate Stoic poster boy?
Exactly. Cato the Younger took that inherited sense of duty, that traditional Roman gravitas and virtus, but he grounded it in something Cato the Elder would have hated Stoic philosophy. He didn't just inherit his moral compass. He actively forged it through rigorous philosophical practice. He internalized those Roman virtues, but gave them a universal rational foundation through Stoicism. That's what made him exceptional. He cultivated that unwavering resolve.
So he combined tradition with philosophy. And this intense commitment to principle, well, it didn't always make him popular, did it? It often put him directly at odds with the political realities of Rome. His idealism could be pretty unflinching.
Unflinching is the perfect word, and a classic example, one that really throws this tension between principle and pragmatism into sharp relief, is the Murena case.
Right, tell us about that. It happened in a pretty crucial year for Rome, didn't it?
It did, 63 BC, a really turbulent time. Cato decided to prosecute Lucius Murena for bribing his way into the consulship, one of the highest offices. For Cato, it was completely clear-cut. Murena had broken the law, he cheated, therefore he had to be punished and removed from public life. End of story.
Just pure principle.
Pure Stoic principle.
Yeah.
What's right is right. Nothing else matters. Not political convenience, not personal connections, nothing. Just justice and the integrity of the republic.
But then you had Cicero defending Murena. And Cicero was, well, Cicero, Rome's greatest orator,
Yep.
a master politician. He saw things differently.
Very differently. Cicero, in his speech defending Murena, which we still have, actually acknowledged Cato's immense moral standing. Everyone respected Cato's character. But Cicero essentially argued that Cato's idealism in this specific situation was, frankly, naive, or at least politically dangerous.
Dangerous.
Well, Cicero argued for the good of the state. Remember, this was right after the Catilinarian conspiracy. A major internal threat to Rome had just been put down. Rome was still shaky. Cicero basically asked, can we really afford right now to tear ourselves apart with this kind of internal political fight? Can we risk destabilizing things further?
Ah, okay. So prosecuting Murena might be right in principle, but maybe not wise at that moment.
That was Cicero's point. He argued that convicting Murena would leave the consulship vacant, or in worse hands, just when Rome needed strong, stable leadership. He worried it could actually weaken the state when it was most vulnerable. For Cicero, the immediate practical consequences for the Republic seemed to outweigh Cato's absolute adherence to the letter of the law in that specific perilous context.
Wow. That's not just ancient history, is it? That feels incredibly relevant. That tension between sticking to your guns on principle, whatever the cost, versus making a pragmatic compromise for what seems like the greater good.
Yeah.
That's a dilemma people face all the time, in politics, in business, even in personal life.
Absolutely. It forces you to ask incredibly difficult questions. When does upholding a principle become more important than, say, maintaining stability or avoiding immediate negative fallout? For Cato, at least in this case, the answer was crystal clear. Virtue comes first. He genuinely seemed to believe that a republic built on compromised principles, on corruption, couldn't truly stand in the long run, no matter how convenient those compromises seemed at the time.
His conviction was just absolute. And this moral courage, this willingness to stand on principle, it really reached its zenith, didn't it, in his final stand against Julius Caesar, a stand that led to his ultimate sacrifice.
Yes, this is truly the climax of his story, the ultimate expression of doing the right thing when it's hard. His resolute opposition to Caesar's consolidation of power and his eventual suicide in Utica rather than submit became legendary.
How was it viewed at the time and later on?
Well, scholars like Richard Rutherford point out that his stand and his death were widely considered glorious and heroic, especially later under the Empire when looking back at the Republic. There's this detail that he spent his last hours rereading Plato's Phaedo, the dialogue about Socrates' death.
Wow. So he was consciously modeling his end on Socrates.
It seems so. He saw Socrates' calm acceptance of death for his principles as a model for his own final act. Cicero also made that comparison, linking Cato's end to Socrates. It framed his suicide not as an act of despair or defeat, but as a final heroic assertion of liberty and principle against tyranny. It was a deliberate choice to preserve his integrity when, in his view, a virtuous life under Caesar was no longer possible.
That framing is crucial. It wasn't giving up. It was a final act of agency. And there's a philosophical justification for this in Stoicism itself, isn't there? Something about living in conformity with nature.
Yes, precisely. There is a quote attributed to Cato, relayed through Cicero, and noted by Marcus Aurelius, that gets at this. Cato argued that while all creatures naturally seek self-preservation first, humans must then proceed to live in conformity with nature. And he says it is only at this final stage that the good first emerges and comes to be understood in its true nature.
Okay, unpack that a little. How does that justify, well, choosing death?
It means that for a rational being, simply staying alive isn't the highest goal. The highest goal is living virtuously, living in accordance with reason and nature. If the circumstances become such that you cannot live virtuously, if you're forced to compromise your principles, participate in injustice, or live under tyranny, then choosing death to preserve your moral integrity can become the ultimate expression of living in conformity with nature. It's choosing the good, as you understand it, over mere biological existence. It's a radical assertion of moral freedom.
That reframes everything. It turns an apparent end into a statement of ultimate principle. So, okay, that gives us a sense of Cato's incredible resolve. But how did he and other Stoics actually build that kind of unwavering commitment? Let's get into the Stoic framework itself, the mental toolkit they used.
Right, because this kind of strength doesn't just happen. It requires training.
And one of the absolute bedrock ideas in Stoicism, something that offers a really clear guide for where to put your energy, is the dichotomy of control. You hear this mentioned a lot.
It's fundamental. Epictetus lays it out very clearly. Some things are up to us or under our complete control, and other things are not up to us, not completely under our control.
What falls into each category?
What's up to us? Our judgments, our opinions, our intentions, our desires, our aversions, basically, our inner world, our responses, our choices. What's not completely up to us? Pretty much everything else. Our body, our health, our reputation, other people's actions, political outcomes, the weather, you name it, external events.
So the core idea is focus all your energy on what is up to you and cultivate a kind of acceptance about everything else.
Acceptance, or what they called indifference. Now, indifferent doesn't mean you don't care at all. You can prefer health to sickness, wealth to poverty. Of course you do. But you recognize deep down that you don't have ultimate control over getting those preferred things. They aren't guaranteed.
Okay.
So, as Gregory Lopez and Massimo Pigliucci explain it, the goal is to train yourself to primarily desire only what is completely in your control, your own virtuous responses and judgments. If you can do that, you achieve ataraxia, this profound state of inner peace, of serenity.
How does that lead to serenity?
Because if you only truly want what you can guarantee you can achieve your own good judgments and actions, then you'll always get what you want. You free yourself from the constant anxiety, frustration, and disappointment that comes from pinning your happiness on external outcomes you can't control.
That sounds incredibly powerful, but also incredibly difficult to actually live by. So if all those external things are indifferent, what do the Stoics say is truly good or truly bad?
This is where they make a really radical claim. The only truly good thing is good judgment, acting virtuously. And the only truly bad thing is bad judgment, acting viciously. These judgments and the actions that flow from them reflect your character, your virtue, specifically your practical wisdom.
So things like health, wealth, reputation.
Merely preferred or dispreferred indifference. They don't make you a morally better or worse person. Having wealth doesn't make you good. Being poor doesn't make you bad. Your response to wealth or poverty, that's what reflects your virtue.
Okay, I see how that applies directly to Cato. His focus wasn't on whether he'd win the political battle against Caesar.
Exactly. That was largely outside his control.
His focus was on his own choices, his own judgments, his own actions in that situation. Were they just? Were they courageous? Were they in line with his principles?
Precisely. Those were the things he could control. And because he focused on that, he could maintain his inner integrity and resolve even when facing defeat and death. The outcome was, in the Stoic sense, indifferent to his moral worth. He controlled the quality of his effort, not the result.
That focus on your own judgments and actions naturally leads to the next core idea, doesn't it? The absolute centrality of virtue itself. For Stoics, virtue wasn't just a good thing, it was the highest good, the summum bonum.
It's the ultimate goal. Achieving virtue makes you, in their view, self-sufficient for happiness and fundamentally immune to suffering, because your well-being is no longer dependent on those uncontrollable external factors. Your goodness comes from within.
And what does this virtue actually consist of? Is it just one thing?
It's often summarized by 4 cardinal virtues, which all work together. First, there's wisdom, not just book smarts, but practical moral insight, knowing what's truly good and bad, and how to act accordingly.
Like Cato discerning that bribery was wrong.
Right. Then there's courage, or fortitude. Not just physical bravery, but the mental and moral strength to do what's right, despite fear or hardship. Cicero actually defined fortitude in a way that sounds exactly like Cato, the knowledge of things to be endured, or a mindset that obeys the highest law without fear.
Fits him perfectly. What else?
Self-control or temperance, mastering your desires and emotions, maintaining discipline and composure, not being ruled by impulses, and finally, justice, acting fairly, honorably, fulfilling your duties to others and the community. Cato's prosecution of Murena, his stand against Caesar, these were acts driven by his sense of justice.
So it's not just important to be virtuous, it's literally the only thing that ultimately matters for a good life.
That's the radical Stoic claim. As Lawrence Becker puts it, virtue is the only ultimate good. Any other goal, like health, career success, relationships, should only be pursued in ways that are compatible with virtue. If pursuing wealth means being dishonest, a Stoic would say you must choose honesty, even if it means poverty. Virtue trumps everything else. And this isn't just about personal purity either. Stoicism has this concept of cosmopolitanism, the idea that all humans are citizens of the world, brothers and sisters bound by reason. This means virtue isn't just for you. It grounds a strong sense of duty to your community, to humanity. Sometimes this duty might even demand self-sacrifice for the common good.
So Cato's fight wasn't just personal principle, it was also tied to this broader sense of duty to Rome, to the Republic as he saw it.
Absolutely. His fight against corruption and tyranny was an expression of justice and courage, deeply rooted in this cosmopolitan sense of responsibility. He saw it as his duty to uphold the principles of the Republic for the good of all its citizens, even at great personal cost.
And underpinning all of this, the dichotomy of control, the focus on virtue, the sense of duty, is this idea of living in accordance with nature. What does that mean for a Stoic?
It sounds a bit mystical, maybe, but it's actually quite logical within their worldview. They believe the universe or cosmos is fundamentally rational, ordered, and coherent, governed by a universal reason they sometimes call God or nature or logos. And since humans possess reason, we share in this fundamental cosmic rationality. We're intrinsically connected to this larger order. So living in accordance with nature means aligning your own individual reason, your choices, your actions, with this universal rational order of the cosmos. It's about living harmoniously with the way things truly are, rationally speaking.
So it's not just passively accepting fate, it's actively choosing to live rationally and virtuously within that larger rational system.
Exactly. It's about finding complete harmony between a man's own attitudes and actions and the actual course of events, as A. Long puts it. And this directly informs our duties, our kathekanta. Epictetus stresses that our actions have to relate to our roles and responsibilities towards others as a parent, as a citizen, as a human being. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminds himself to perform just actions done in service of the human community.
It's a very active, engaged way of life, grounded in this sense of cosmic connection and responsibility. And this even connects to ideas about leadership, right? The philosopher king.
Yes. Musonius Rufus, another key Stoic, argued that a good king is from the start a philosopher out of necessity, and that a philosopher is from the start also a kingly person. The idea is that true wisdom and virtue are essential for just and effective leadership. You need that philosophical grounding to rule well.
And Cato, even though he wasn't a king, he sort of embodied that ideal in his public life.
You could definitely argue that. He was a senator, a major public figure, and his actions seemed consistently driven by this deep sense of philosophical duty, by his attempt to apply rational, virtuous principles to the messy reality of Roman politics. He was trying to live out that kingly philosophical ideal in his role, serving the Republic according to the highest principles he knew, even when it made him unpopular or put him in mortal danger.
Okay, so we have this incredibly robust framework. Know what you control. Make virtue your only goal. Live according to reason and duty. But knowing these things is one thing. Actually doing them when things get tough is another. How did Stoics like Cato actually prepare themselves for the hardship, the isolation, the fear that comes with standing firm? Let's talk about cultivating resilience.
Right, the practical exercises. Because theory isn't enough.
And one of the most famous and maybe strangest sounding techniques is negative visualization. Thinking about bad things happening. How does that help?
It sounds counterintuitive, I know. Like, why dwell on the negative?
Yeah.
But the Stoics were incredibly insightful here. The point isn't to be morbid or pessimistic. It's actually twofold. First, by consciously contemplating potential misfortunes, losing your possessions, losing loved ones, losing your health, you prepare your mind for them. You reduce the shock and sting if they do happen.
We're like a mental fire drill.
Exactly. But the second, and maybe even more powerful effect, is that it dramatically increases your appreciation for what you have right now.
How?
Epictetus gives this striking example. When you kiss your child goodnight, silently remind yourself that she's mortal, that she might not be there tomorrow. Marcus Aurelius mentions this too. Now that sounds harsh, but as William Irvine explained, the effect isn't to make you love her less, but to cherish the present moment with her more. You stop taking her presence for granted. You appreciate the gift of her being here now.
So by contemplating loss, you intensify your appreciation of the present. That's a fascinating paradox.
It really is. Irvine points out that normally you'd think, if I don't appreciate something, I won't mind losing it. But the Stoics, because they practice this, become deeply appreciative. This might make the actual loss painful when it comes, sure, but it also builds resilience because you've already faced the possibility mentally. And crucially, it fills your current life with gratitude.
So for someone like Cato, regularly contemplating the loss of the Republic or his own freedom or even his life, that wasn't about giving in to despair.
Not at all. It was mental armor. It was a way to fortify his mind, to strip those potential losses of their terror, allowing him to act from principle without being paralyzed by fear of these indifferent outcomes. By embracing the possibility of loss, he strengthened his resolve to act rightly, regardless of the cost.
Okay, that makes sense. Another related practice is voluntary discomfort, deliberately making yourself uncomfortable. Why on earth would you do that?
Again, it sounds strange, but there's a clear logic. Musonius Rufus talked about this a lot. He saw several benefits. Firstly, by occasionally choosing minor discomforts, maybe eating plain food when you could feast, sleeping on the floor, wearing thin clothes in the cold, you harden yourself, mentally and physically.
Like training for hardship.
Exactly. If you only ever experience comfort, you'll be completely shattered when real misfortune strikes. Voluntary discomfort is like a vaccine, Musoni suggested. Exposing yourself to a small, controlled dose of hardship now builds immunity against bigger shocks later. It's like paying a small insurance premium against future suffering.
And it also teaches you that you can handle more than you think.
Precisely. You learn that you can endure cold, or hunger, or lack of sleep, and it's not the end of the world. It recalibrates your sense of what's truly necessary and what you're capable of withstanding.
We see this in that famous story about Epictetus, right? When his master supposedly broke his leg.
Yeah, the story goes that Epictetus simply warned him it might break, and when it did, he calmly said something like, "See? Didn't I tell you?" He apparently accepted his lameness with the same equanimity he accepted things he couldn't change, like not being able to fly. It illustrates that cultivated indifference to physical hardship.
So for Cato, in that incredibly turbulent political world where exile, confiscation, physical threats were real possibilities, this kind of self-hardening wasn't just an abstract exercise.
It was essential survival training. It built the mental and physical toughness needed to maintain integrity when external circumstances turned hostile. It allowed him to endure without cracking, without compromising his principles, just to regain comfort or safety.
But physical hardship is one thing. What about emotions? Intense fear, overwhelming anger. These can completely derail even the strongest principles. How did Stoics manage the emotional storms?
This leads to their idea of apatheia, right? Which sounds like...
Apathy.
Right, and that's a huge misunderstanding. Apatheia does not mean being an unfeeling zombie. It doesn't mean eliminating emotions altogether. That's not the goal, and probably not even possible.
So what does it mean?
It means freedom from the path, the passions specifically, the irrational, unhealthy, excessive emotions that disturb our reason and lead us astray. Things like consuming rage, paralyzing fear, obsessive craving, gnawing envy, constant anxiety. These, the Stoics argued, stem from faulty judgments, like believing that something external and uncontrollable is truly terrible or absolutely essential for our happiness.
So it's about targeting the source of those disruptive emotions, the bad judgments.
Exactly. By correcting your judgments, you transform the emotions. Apatheia isn't the absence of feeling. It's the presence of rational calm and the absence of those morbid emotions. It actually makes space for eupatheiae, the good feelings, things like rational joy based on virtue, appropriate caution instead of irrational fear, and genuine goodwill towards others. It's about letting reason be your guide, not disruptive passions.
Okay, that makes more sense. Discipline, not denial. What about anger specifically? That seems like a big one, especially in politics like Cato faced.
Oh, huge. Both Seneca and Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about managing anger. Seneca called it a brief madness, something utterly destructive and usually pointless, disturbing your own peace more than anything. Marcus Aurelius, who admitted he had a temper, constantly worked on it. He thanked the gods for helping him not lash out, even when provoked.
What were their strategies? Just count to 10.
Sometimes delaying action helps, yes, giving the initial surge time to pass. But more fundamentally, they used cognitive techniques, examining the underlying beliefs fueling the anger, asking, was I truly harmed? Was this person acting out of malice or ignorance? Is getting angry actually going to help the situation or just make it worse? Is this worth sacrificing my own tranquility over? It's about rationally dissecting the anger.
And fear, the opposite of courage.
Fear is seen as equally irrational, often stemming from focusing on future possibilities outside our control. The Stoics pointed out, quite logically, why suffer twice? If something bad might happen later, why pull that suffering into the present by fearing it now? Fear multiplies our problems and often paralyzes the very actions that might mitigate the danger.
So for someone like Cato, facing Caesar, facing potential death, managing fear and anger wasn't just nice to have, it was crucial for acting at all.
Absolutely paramount. If he'd been consumed by fear of Caesar's power or rage at the perceived injustice, his judgment would have been clouded, His actions perhaps impulsive or ineffective. His emotional discipline, his cultivated apatheia, was the necessary foundation for his clear-headed, principled, unwavering stance.
And this brings us to maybe the ultimate resilience practice. Cultivating an intimacy with death. Not ignoring it, but actively contemplating it.
Yes, this sounds morbid again, but like negative visualization, it has a profoundly liberating effect. Seneca's advice is stark. Let death and exile and every other thing that appears dreadful be every day before your eyes, but most of all death. And you will never harbor any low thoughts, nor have an extravagant desire for anything.
How does contemplating death achieve that?
By constantly keeping the ultimate end in view, it puts everything else into perspective. Petty worries, trivial desires, fear of minor losses, they all shrink in significance compared to the fact of mortality. It strips away the non-essential and focuses the mind on what truly matters. Living virtuously now, it frees you from excessive attachment to things you will inevitably lose.
And they also drew on the Epicurean idea about death, didn't they? That it's basically nothing to us.
Yes, they found that perspective useful. The argument goes, when we exist, death is not present. When death is present, we do not exist. So death itself is not something we experience. Marcus Aurelius puts it similarly. If death is just the cessation of awareness, why worry? It's the absence of experience, neither good nor bad in itself.
So this deep familiarity with and reframing of death is what allowed Cato to make his final choice without seeing it as a failure or tragedy.
Exactly. His suicide wasn't an act born of fear or despair about death. It was a reasoned choice made in light of his understanding of death as a natural limit, a boundary beyond which tyranny and compromise could not force him. It was the ultimate assertion of his principles, preserving his integrity by choosing the manner and timing of his exit, seeing death not as an evil to be feared, but as a potential refuge for virtue when all other avenues were closed.
Wow. Okay, so we've seen the man, the philosophical framework, and the intense mental training. What then does Cato's life and death really teach us about the actual cost and maybe the ultimate reward of standing alone for your principles?
Well, the cost is definitely clear and often immediate.
Yeah, Cato's story makes it obvious. Sticking rigidly to principles often means isolation. It means losing political battles, being seen as, unrealistic or naive.
Cicero's reaction in the Murena case is the classic example, isn't it? He respected Cato immensely, but thought his idealism was simply impractical in that messy political reality. By refusing to bend, Cato often sacrificed alliances, influence, the ability to maybe achieve some good through compromise. He paid a price in terms of conventional political effectiveness.
It makes you think about Seneca again, living later under the emperors. He chose a different path, didn't he? He retired from Nero's dangerous court rather than making a final, perhaps futile stand like Cato.
Right, and Seneca faced criticism for that, for a perceived lack of moral courage outside the study. But he defended his choice, arguing he could contribute more to humanity through his philosophy, his writing, by preserving himself to teach future generations, rather than throwing his life away in a pointless political gesture.
So even among Stoics, there wasn't just one answer to how you apply these principles in the face of tyranny or corruption.
No, it highlights a real tension. Is the highest duty always uncompromising confrontation, like Cato? Or can strategic withdrawal, or finding alternative ways to contribute, also be a virtuous path, as Seneca argued? It shows the complex calculations involved when applying these ideals to the real world. There are trade-offs.
And then there's that ideal of the philosopher king, or the philosophically grounded leader. Musonius Rufus seemed to think it was almost necessary for good rule. But reality, even for someone like Marcus Aurelius, the actual emperor-philosopher, was much harder, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Marcus Aurelius's meditations are filled with his struggles. He laments the insincerity and corruption he saw around him. He constantly had to work on his own temper, his frustration with difficult people. He wasn't some naturally serene sage effortlessly ruling. He was actively using stoicism to cope with the immense pressures and moral complexities of power.
So even the ideal figures find it incredibly difficult. It's not easy for anyone.
Not at all. It gives us a realistic perspective. And it makes Cato's resolve, even if maybe politically clumsy at times, even more remarkable. He was relentlessly trying to live out that philosophical ideal in the messy public square, despite the immense difficulty. The struggle itself is part of the story.
Okay, so the costs are clear. Isolation, political ineffectiveness sometimes, immense personal struggle. But what about the reward? Despite all that, the Stoics claimed this path leads to eudaimonia, true flourishing, real happiness, and leaves a lasting impact.
Yes, and this is the crucial payoff, though it's largely internal. Eudaimonia isn't about feeling good all the time in a superficial sense. Becker describes it as a state of being that comes from ideal agency, from living consistently according to reason and virtue.
What does that feel like?
It's characterized by deep calm, equanimity, tranquility. It's the peace that comes from knowing you're doing the right thing, from aligning your will with rational principles. It means an absence of inner conflict, an absence of regret about the past, or anxiety about uncontrollable future events. It's the quiet confidence that comes from living with moral purpose. And crucially, this state is independent of whether you win or lose externally.
Your inner state is secure regardless of outer circumstances.
Exactly. And we see the external reflection of this perhaps in Cato's legacy. Despite his political defeat, despite Caesar's victory, Cato's reputation endured. He became this Stoic martyr, remembered and admired for centuries for his glorious and heroic stand. His actions resonated long after his death.
So the reward isn't necessarily winning in the moment, but achieving this inner state of integrity and leaving a lasting moral example.
Precisely. It connects to what Pierre Hadot called philosophy as a way of life. The point isn't just intellectual understanding, it's becoming a better person through constant practice, those spiritual exercises, like daily reflection, self-correction, meditating on principles until they become part of you. For Cato, the reward was that internal sense of moral purpose, that freedom from regret, which no tyrant could touch. And his enduring fame shows that such integrity can have a powerful, lasting impact, setting a standard that inspires others long after the immediate political struggles are over.
So wrapping up our deep dive today, we've looked at Cato the Younger, this incredible figure who really lived the Stoic call to courage, standing by his principles against enormous pressure, ultimately paying the highest price.
And we've unpacked the philosophical toolkit that supported him, understanding what's truly in our control, making virtue the absolute priority, and building resilience through practices like negative visualization and voluntary discomfort, and managing those disruptive emotions.
We've seen his commitment to virtue as the highest good, and that sense of duty rooted in living according to reason and nature. His life really forces us to think about those clashes between principle and pragmatism and what it truly means to stand alone for what you believe.
It really underscores the power of internal conviction, doesn't it?
It does. So let's loop back to that question we started with, but maybe with a Stoic lens now.
Yeah.
When is it your duty to risk unpopularity, to stand alone, to fight for what's right, no matter the cost? The Stoic answer seems to be, it's your duty when your core principles, your rational judgments, demand it when acting otherwise would violate your own virtue, and you do so accepting the external consequences, whatever they may be, as ultimately indifferent to your true moral worth.
A challenging but clear standard.
But here's one final thought to leave you with, something that adds perhaps another layer of difficulty. It comes from Musonius Rufus, who wrote beautifully about human connection. What man feels so close to his male friend as a devoted wife feels to her husband? What brother feels so close to his brother? What son feels so close to his parents? Who is missed so much when absent? Whose presence could do more to lessen grief, increase joy, or alleviate misfortune? So how do those Stoic ideals of duty and justice square up when upholding your principles might mean damaging or even severing those incredibly vital, intimate human bonds that Musonius highlights? When you face that kind of choice between an abstract principle and the concrete people you love, what truly matters most, how do you navigate that crossroads? Something to think about.
A deeply challenging question indeed. Until next time.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.